Okay, welcome back to my Civilization 4 beginner's tutorial. When we left off, I was talking about the espionage screen. I don't believe I got to everything. You can perform various missions such as sabotaging improvements in your opponent's land, buildings, projects, stealing money from their treasury, etc. And my real issue with espionage is it only masks a problem. It's basically the tearing down of other civilizations when you could have been building yours up. And generally, it's a recipe for failure because while you're tearing down one civilization, the other civilizations continue building. So we have finished. Fortunately, I don't know why why the game is playing so badly. The frame rate is abysmal. But anyway, now that I've finished constructing a pasture here, I have access to that sheep resource. And now I'm going to move on and construct a mine on this tile up here. Now this is a hill, and the reason that I would choose this hill over, let's say, this hill here or here is not simply because it's closer, but because there is a river that runs past it, which means we get one additional commerce on that tile due to the river being there. So you'll see over here, for example, we have a hill with a grassland on it, and it has one food and one hammer. Then we have a hill over here with a grassland on it as well, but it has one food, one hammer, and one commerce. And that's the similar situation over here. Now, there are different types of terrain. Grassland is great for growing cities. It has two food on it if it's a flat piece of grassland. If it's a hilled grassland, it has one food and one hammer. Compare this to the plains, which on the flat plains, it has one food and one hammer, and then on the hill plains, it has two hammers and no food. So it's definitely beneficial in the earlier parts of the game to settle around land that is of grassland nature. I don't know if that might be a terrible way of explaining it.
Not at all similar are the race of the immortal
So we have now
gods
completed
and the race of
polytheism,
men who
and we
walk
would
upon the
have
earth.
founded Hinduism if it wasn't for the fact that another civilization beat us to it. So instead, I'm going to build a mine here on this tile. Now, building a mine, like any other improvement, is going to increase the amount of resources that tile can generate. So in the case of the sheep, it increased the amount of food as well as added some commerce. In the case of the mine, it's going to add +2 hammers, which is production, and will produce more hammers when that tile is worked by the local city. So there you go. Now there are various different, and I can't, that's right. Monotheism requires masonry, which is going to further increase the length or the amount of time it takes me to actually get there. We're just going to go with masonry. I'm going to get Judaism just so you see what a religion is like. Now, one small thing I'm going to mention here about terrains is different terrains have different bonuses. A flat terrain has no bonus. So you can see here we have grassland that has no bonus, desert that has no bonus because it's all flat. However, hills, regardless of the terrain type, have a 25% defense bonus, and forests have a 50% defense bonus. This means if you have a forest on a hill, you get a 75% defense bonus to any unit that's stationed on that hill when the unit on the hill is attacked. Interestingly enough, those lions did not attack us. So we have completed the mine on this tile, and as you can see, the city is now working it during the production of this settler. And since I haven't researched the ability to construct cottages yet, I'm going to simply build a farm on this tile. It will take 7 turns, but it's better to have that tile yielding additional food than yielding nothing at all.
It is from their foes, not
So now we have completed masonry, another technology, and it enables different additional buildings, such as the walls. We can build a quarry, and it will allow us to now research monotheism. And I think I'm going to start moving my warrior back towards Washington to defend. So the settler has now finished building, and the recommended place is right over here, which at the time when I was discussing the area over here was not revealed on the map yet fully. Now, when settling a city, there are some things to take into consideration, areas that you'd want to settle on. In this case, the game does recommend this tile, and it is a good tile for a couple of reasons. Number one, there is a river next to it, which as I explained earlier, will give that city additional health. It will also help defend the city because units attacking across this river will incur a 25% the attack penalty, I believe it is. There are also a couple of other things to keep in mind. The resources surrounding this village. So now, or this city. So if I build a city here, you can see what tiles will be available to be worked. Now, there will be some crossover between this city and my capital. But at this point in the game, that's not really a big issue because it's hard to grow very large cities early on in the game. And most likely the game ends before you reach a point where you can really grow massive cities and the overlap causes problems. There are limits, however. You can't build it within 2 tiles of your existing city. So if I build right here, the bonus to, or the good thing about, the reason why this tile is recommended also is there is a food resource and a luxury resource. The food resource will make sure that once improved, the city will grow and it won't just stagnate and sit there at a couple of population for long periods of time. And that is really quite important during the early game. You want to make sure your original founding cities are of quality, that they will actually grow and they won't be a burden on your economy, because founding cities that are too in areas that are poor, like let's say I founded one over here in the desert, it's not going to yield a lot, and yet it's going to cost me money or gold every turn in maintenance. And that is another thing to keep in mind. Don't go settling cities very far away from your capital because the cost in maintenance will kill you in the early game. So while it might have been desirable to found a city over here, that's going to cost me more than simply founding the city here. And it's also going to be more difficult to defend it from things such as barbarian attacks because it is further away. And it would also require me to move my workers further. So for early on cities, at least, for the first couple, I would recommend settling them near to your capital city, if at all possible. Like I said, keep in mind that there are certain conditions that should be met. In this case, it is make sure you have at least one food resource for that city that will allow it to grow at a reasonable rate. So I'm going to move my settler over here. When your settler is on the move, you should always protect them. My warrior has received another promotion, and promotions are not something I really touched on. And if you're familiar with Civilization 5, it's kind of similar to that, except instead the promotions generally in this game tend to be more useful. They're more varied. You can promote units for additional strength. In this case, I gave it two combat promotions, Combat 1 and Combat 2, which increases the strength of this warrior by 20%. Pretty much irregardless of what sort of combat situation the warrior finds itself in, it will receive that 20% bonus. If you have more specialized needs, let's say this warrior needs to attack an archer, there will be a promotion against archery units for a 25% bonus when attacking archery units. And this leads to some rather unique dynamics between units in a stack, because that is another important aspect of Civilization 4's combat, is how units stack instead of actually being limited to one per tile. And if you have units promoted against certain other units when facing a stack of varied units, it will change which unit that stack chooses to defend against your unit. For example, if you have an archer and a warrior in a stack, and I'm going to attack it, and if I had my warrior promoted against melee units, it would be more likely to choose the archery unit because the odds are better. But regardless of that, and I think that pretty much explains the point, we're going to heal once again, which is always a good idea. And now that we've completed the settler in Washington, I'm not sure what I really want to build next. Overall, a warrior would be good because I want to continue exploring the world. I have really neglected military in this game. I'm going to be using the warrior to defend my settler and on the way over here, just to make sure. It's a good practice and a good habit to get into, because oftentimes there will be a barbarian and you say, oh, should I take this chance? And it just turns out there is a barbarian lurking out here in the fog of war, and they attack and kill your settler. And that's never a good thing. Now, ideally, at this point in the game, I should have archers, but I was focusing more on founding a religion, so that's going to really detract from the amount of time I have to build or to research technologies that would allow me to build an archer. And archers are great for defending cities. They have innate bonuses while defending in a city. So here we have the settler in place, and I'm going to build another city. So there's New York, my second city. And as you can see, if we enter into it, the city immediately started working that tile with the resource on it because that it provides the most food on any tile currently within the radius of the city. And as soon as my worker is done over here, I'm going to be sending it over here to improve the corn resource. And now here's another interesting thing. This city will not be producing culture unless it has a building that produces culture or a religion. In my case, it has no building, and you can choose to build one. However, since this is my second city, most likely when monotheism is completed, I will be founding Judaism in this city. Therefore, it is not necessary for me to actually build a monument in the city because the religion would be bringing in more than enough culture to expand the borders reliably. So we can focus on something else. And I think in this case, uh, probably a warrior. On second thought, make it a worker. So we have completed a warrior now in Washington. And I'm going to focus, I think, on another worker. And now that this worker has finished the farm, I'm going to send him over to the corn resource to improve that. We have met our second civilization, Sitting Bull of the Native American Empire. Once again, he also has a -1 hit against me in terms of opinion, much like Julius Caesar had. And the consequences for leader opinion in this game work a little bit different from Civilization 5. They're much more open about how they feel towards you. For example, in this case, cautious is pretty much neutral. They have negative impressions of me, but given their current stance towards me, it's unlikely they will declare war. And that's really all you have to worry about. They're not going to denounce you or anything. It's basically once they get annoyed, it's more likely that they'll declare war. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of difference between annoyed and furious when it comes to their likelihood to declare war in my experience, but there is a significant difference between cautious and pleased towards you. They're much less likely to declare war if they're pleased with you. And if they're friendly, they'll only declare war in what seems to be rather extreme circumstances, such as they feel they can't expand their territory anymore. If you have borders that are shared that are really close to the other civilizations, you might not want to befriend those because those close borders will always cause tensions and hurt your relations.
I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me.
Okay, so we have now completed the research of monotheism, which, if we are the first to research it, we found a religion called Judaism. And we are the first. So Judaism was founded here in New York, as you can see. And if we go into the city, you'll see that having this religion in here provides a +5 culture bonus to the city. Now, there really is no unique traits to any of these religions. They all do the same thing in the standard versions of Civilization 4. And the only real reason to have them different is so that there is religious conflict throughout the world, depending upon who founded what religion. If you spread yours to other civilizations and they adopt the religion that you are, there will be a positive bonus, a positive opinion bonus between you two for having the same religion. And since we have founded Judaism, we can now adopt it in our cities. Now, as I mentioned before, if you have two civilizations with the same religion, they'll enjoy a opinion boost between the two of them. However, if there are civilizations with different religions, depending upon how fanatical they are, they might just downright hate you for having a different religion. Some of them are rather indifferent. It depends upon the leader. So this is something to keep in mind. If you are in a bit of a sticky situation and you can't afford to have a lot of the world allied against you, if they are all of one religion and you are of a different religion, that could be like diplomatic suicide because you are pretty much outnumbered and they'll all hate you for having a different religion while at the same time being very close for all having that same religion. So that's something you have to keep in mind when a religion spreads into your lands and you have to decide whether or not to convert. In this case, since the two civilizations that I've currently met, who are apparently near to me, do not have a religion, I think it is safe to adopt Judaism. Now, if you are not a spiritual leader, anytime you could change religion or change your civics, which are the Civilization 4 equivalent of social policies in Civilization 5, your empire will experience a period of revolution. And this is marked by a lack of your cities really producing anything, research or production, or growing. So it's basically a turn that you do not produce anything in your empire. So it's like a timeout turn. So next we're going to work on bronze working because I want to see if there's any copper in my vicinity. So here we have uncovered the borders of my nearest neighbor, Julius Caesar. You can see how his empire is already developing. He has a couple of sea-based resources that have been improved, as well as some marble here that has a quarry built on it, also improved. So it looks like he's doing fairly well, although he's a little bit behind me in terms of points. That is not an accurate indicator of how strong he is overall. If you are wondering more about civilizations, you can check them out here in the info screen. As I pointed out earlier, you're going to need to have a relatively high amount of espionage against them to actually see the demographics. For example, if we select Julius Caesar here, we can see that to see the demographics in the stats page over here that I was at, you're going to need to have at least 62 espionage points against him. I currently do not have enough espionage points against Sitting Bull, which is why I can't see his stats on this page. And this page will show you various different things. For example, here we have the score. Here we have how much gold, how much commerce I'm making, production, food, power. You can see Julius Caesar is significantly more powerful than I am, likely because I'm held back by only having warriors. Culture, I'm starting to skyrocket up because I have founded a religion and Julius Caesar has not. And then espionage, which I'm lagging a bit behind in, probably because Julius Caesar is actually committing some commerce to generating espionage points. And here we have a rather arbitrary thing. From time to time, the game will give you these pop-ups. They'll have the largest civilization, the most cultured civilization. It really doesn't mean anything, but it sort of gives you an idea where you place in these rankings if you don't actually have the statistics in the info screen graph page. And here we can see Julius Caesar is setting out with a settler and a warrior. He's going to likely be founding his second city. And now that I've produced a second warrior in Washington, I'm going to start building another settler. Now here is a classic example of one of the differences between Civilization 4 and Civilization 5. On this tile that I recently moved my warrior onto, there is another warrior belonging to Julius Caesar, because in Civilization 4 you can have pretty much an unlimited number of units on a single tile. They can all occupy the same tile without any negative consequences of doing so. And in this case, Julius Caesar has an army unit on this tile, and I do as well. So now we have met our first barbarian unit that is not an animal. Right here there's a spearman guarding a goody hut, or what is called a tribal village. The equivalent would be the ruins in Civilization 5. Now this unit is not a threat to us because it's going to prioritize guarding this tribal village over attacking my units, but other barbarian units will wander around the world, and if they find your units, they will likely attack them, and if they find your cities, they will advance on and attack them as well. Now I'm in a particularly vulnerable state here because I only have warriors defending my cities when I should have at least have archers and hopefully axemen pretty soon if I have copper within the borders of my empire here. Now, at the moment, I'm currently working on a settler, and I'm also researching bronze working. Once I've completed bronze working, I will know if there's any copper in my vicinity. Copper is a very important strategic early game resource for building military units. If you don't have copper, it's unlikely that you'll be waging war on it until at least the classical age. If you feel compelled to do so, if you are pressed into a war, it will most likely be a defensive war on your part until you can at least acquire iron. And hopefully you can require iron, because iron is very important. If you can't acquire iron by the classical era, then you'll pretty much be playing a defensive game until at least the industrial era.
It is entirely seemly for a young man killed in battle to lie mangled by the bronze spear. In his death, all things appear fair.
So now I just researched bronze working. I accidentally clicked it off before looking at it, but it reveals copper on the map. And as you can see, there's some copper right here. And it allows me to build axemen, which are a unit that receive a hefty bonus against other melee units. If we look at the map, there's some copper in my vicinity, but it's way over here, and I really haven't explored the area very much. to see what the ideal space would be. So I'm going to be sending us some warriors out to that area because I want to claim the copper. It is a very important strategic resource. And now we can adopt the slavery civic, which I'm going to do. And I'm going to explain civics a bit. In Civilization 5, you have social policies, which function similarly to civics. However, where civics differ is that while social policies are a one-time adoption, civics can be swapped around anytime you feel like it. So as you research more technologies, you'll gain access to different civic policies, yes, here, and then you can choose whether or not you want to adopt them. In my case, I had a labor civic unlocked, slavery, and I could move from the tribalism civic to the slavery civic. And the same applies to organized religion. I have unlocked that as a civic, and I can switch to it. As a matter of fact, I should have done that because I likely could have accomplished both in one turn. And organized religion would increase the speed that my cities build buildings if they have my state religion in that city. So that was an oversight on my part. But really, I would say the biggest difference in civics is that while in Civilization 5, civics are permanent, social policies are permanent, civics in Civilization 4 can be swapped around pretty much at any time you want, providing you're willing to pay the anarchy penalty. So for one turn, it will increase as your empire grows. So towards the later game, you might have to wait for 3 turns. But in the early game, 1 turn you have to waste to change those civics around.
Put your shoulder to the wheel.
So I've completed the wheel research, which will allow me to build roads in my empire. And this will allow me to speed up the transportation between cities as well as establish trade networks. As you can see right now, my 2 cities are not connected, either by rivers, which is one way you can form a trade network, or by roads, because I haven't built any roads yet. Once I'm allowed to build the roads, I will connect these 2 cities, and then they can start trading with each other. And trade routes work a little bit differently in Civilization 4. They will appear here, and they will generate 1 gold per turn regardless. You don't have to hire any units to do it. It will just be something that's automatic. The more trade routes you have, and the more trade routes with foreign cities across the seas, the more lucrative the trading industry will be for you. Another thing to point out about roads is that they do not cost any maintenance in Civilization 4, and that it will be quite common to see roads spammed pretty much on every tile that is worked on in Civilization 4 and Civilization 3 as well. But we're playing Civilization 4, so that's what we're going to be concerned with here. The most important aspect, though, to roads, however, is that it increases the speed of units between your cities, which makes it much easier to defend your empire during the course of the game. So now here, it was a good thing I went ahead and explored, because by exploring with this warrior here, I uncovered that there is both a corn resource nearby to the copper as well as a sea resource, the clam. So now the ideal location for this city would be right here, because it has the copper, which is a strategic resource, immediately within the borders of this city. So I can start improving it right away and get it networked to my city, my capital, so I can use it to build axemen, as well as a sea resource here, which I can use to grow the city through food. As my borders expand, my borders will expand 1 over, and I'll be able to work that corn resource as well. So this is really quite an excellent location. And by next turn, I'll have a city built there.
On our way.
So now that we can build roads, you'll see the road icon will pop up in your builder's build menu. And it's as simple as clicking on build road to complete it. Now in this city, Boston, my newest city, I'm going to build a monument in it, because it does not, and it will not likely get a religion for a while. And we want to expand the borders so that we can eventually gain access to this corn over here. And that will happen by building a building that provides culture in that city. Unfortunately, there is a barbarian parked right next to our city, so we could be in for a tough time of it here. This warrior doesn't have a whole lot over him.
If you chase 2 rabbits, you will lose them both.
Held my breath there a bit, but my warrior successfully defended against it, and you can always check the combat log up here in the upper left corner if you click on the event log button or press Control Tab. you will receive this event log. It tells you pretty much everything that's happened in the game since you loaded it, as well as the combat log, which pretty much gives you a play-by-play of the combat you engaged in. Now, in this case, it was my warrior versus his warrior, the barbarian's warrior, and my warrior was 3.20 strength versus his warrior was 2.0 strength. He had a combat odds of 4.4% of winning. So I was very likely to win that encounter. And now that we also have access to roads, it's important to connect all of our strategic resources to the trade network. And how you do this is by building a road on all of the tiles that have a strategic or a food, any sort of resource on them. And when it comes to research here, I'm going to select archery, and then I'll be able to build archers in my cities once that is completed. Archers are great, as I said, for defending cities, and I really should have researched it earlier, but I was focusing very heavily on researching to found a religion. But as I was saying, all these resources, you want to connect them to your trade network, which basically means connecting them to your capital through the use of roads. Doing so will grant your city access to all of these resources. In this case, for example, we have corn here, and once the network is complete, we will be able to, it will show up in your city right up here. And in the case of sheep, for example, it provides you with 1 health in that city. Corn will provide you 1 health in that city. It will provide you with 1 health in every city, corn will, that you have it connected to via the trade network. So if I connected this corn resource to this city, a capital, and that city, each one of those cities would receive an additional health. If I connected my wine here, providing it has a winery on it at the time, each of those cities on the trade network would receive 1 happiness, and so on. The same would apply for copper here. Each city that's on the trade network would gain access to the ability to build units that require copper. So now in Washington, I have built a workboat, and the intention here is to sail it all the way over to my city of Boston and build a fishing boats improvement on this tile. That means that I won't have to have Boston build it, and Boston will start growing at a faster rate because I've improved the resource on that tile. Another very useful thing about workboats is that they can be used early on to explore the waters around the land masses that you're currently on. As you can see here, I'm building a second workboat in Washington to do exactly that. The downside, however, is that if it encounters an enemy galley, they will immediately be captured. The upside is they're very cheap to build, so your loss there will be minimum. And the gain that you get from being able to explore the coastline can sometimes outweigh that.
Do not throw the arrow which will return against you.
So I finally researched archery, and I can build an archer in Washington. However, I'm a bit concerned about what's going on over here by Boston. In 3 turns, I could be attacked, and given the fact that that's a spearman, the odds of him killing my warrior is significant. But I tried it, and the next turn that spearman went back into the darkness, the fog of war, so we lucked out there. Unfortunately, now here we have Washington, and this is another thing that's unique to Civilization 4. Washington is unhappy, and you can see why. It's simply too crowded. We have too many people in here, too few improvements and resources to bring happiness to this city. So once we have an unhappy population, they will refuse to work, but they'll still consume food, which means that we probably want to shift over to production or commerce if it's an alternative. Prevent the city from growing. Unfortunately, there really isn't anything as productive mine-wise that the city would switch over to, so it'll continue producing food, really. So our first network has been completed. The trade route between New York and Washington has been established. You can see the little indicator here on the city. There's a circle of 3 arrows. And then if we look inside, you can see that our first trade route is set up. Washington going to New York, and this city, Washington, is earning 1 additional commerce per turn because of this. And we look over at commerce here, base commerce is 15. If we count our commerce on the map, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we have 8 from the palace. And if we look over here at New York, which is also connected to Washington, it's earning an additional 1 base profit, 1 commerce per turn. And for this city, it's significant because our base commerce is 6, included that number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's really 1/6 of my overall commerce is simply by having a trade route here established via roads between Washington and New York. So now here, Judaism has spread into my capital, and this will happen a lot if your cities are connected via a trade route. If your cities are connected via a trade route, it's more likely that religions will spread along that trade route, especially to cities that don't have a religion. Once a city has a religion, no further religions will spread into that city via a trade route, and you'll have to construct a unique unit called a missionary to spread that religion into the city if you want that city to have a specific religion. So I just rushed the barracks in New York, and as you can see right here, we have the button that allows you to hurry units for population. In my case, I wanted to complete the barracks and then build an archer right away. So what I did was, because I have slavery, I was able to use this button right here last turn, and I was able to spend 2 population in New York to complete my barracks the next turn. Now, there was some leftover production, and in this case, it was 28 production. 28 hammers were left over from the last turn. They'll now be applied to my next unit, the archer. So here is my first archer unit. Now, archer units, like I said, are exceptional at defending cities, and I'll tell you why. This archer has a 50% city defense bonus and a 25% hills defense bonus. Since my city of Washington is both on a hills and these archers are in a city, they'll receive both of those bonuses, giving them a 75% bonus plus the 25% bonus of being on a hill in and of itself. So it's a 100% bonus to this archer just for standing in a city on a hill. Now we can increase this. Since I built a barracks in my city, I am now generating additional experience for every unit built in here. In this case, it's +3 experience points to all land units built in Washington. This will give me access to at least 1 promotion for all land units built in that city. And I can choose to promote the unit for Guerrilla 1, which will give me an additional 20% hills defense, or City Garrison 1, which will give me an additional 20% city defense. And I'm going to go ahead and choose the city defense because it's more utilitarian. It means I can move the archer between cities and still enjoy the increased defensive bonus. However, if I thought I was going to be defending on more hills, I would have given it the guerrilla promotion. As a matter of fact, the guerrilla promotion is actually stronger than the city 1 promotion. So if you know that that archer is going to be dedicated to defending this city on this hill, it would be beneficial to give it the guerrilla promotion instead, because the second version of that promotion is stronger than the second version of the city garrison promotion. And one thing to keep in mind, as your borders really start to expand further, you might have areas that are close to the darkness. For example, down here. When you send your workers into those areas, it is wise to include a unit to protect them, because there could be a barbarian chariot, for example, hiding in this tile or this tile. And since they have 2 movement, they will be able to move in and capture your workers. Now, unlike Civilization 5, once an enemy captures a worker in Civilization 4, they immediately delete it. So it is paramount that you protect workers in Civilization 4 because they can't defend themselves. In case I really haven't mentioned this, but workers have no strength of their own. They're completely defenseless civilian units, and any hostile military unit that enters their space will capture them. So now I've finished researching pottery, and this will allow me to build a cottage, which increases the commerce on the square it's built on. The interesting thing about the cottage is that it's a long-term investment and it will grow over time. So if I build a cottage around about this time, 1000 BC, by the time we hit probably 200 AD or so, in 40 turns, it will turn into a town which will yield about 4 times as much gold as when it was a cottage. So it's a long-term investment that can really pay off when it comes to building cottages, and they're some of the best improvements you can build, especially on grassland tiles or floodplain tiles, as you can see here. All these locations would be excellent locations to build a cottage because, as you can see, my city's having trouble enough as it is staying happy with this much food around because it's growing very fast. Now, it should be noted that I didn't, a couple of turns ago, I pointed out that the city was not happy. It is happy now, and that is because Judaism spread into this city a couple turns ago, and with it, because it is my state religion, it brought 1 happiness with it. You can also see, as I mentioned, that connecting resources to your trade network will have them appear in your cities. So far, I've connected corn to my city, my second city, of Boston, New York, actually, I think it is. And since that's connected to this city, along the trade route, the corn comes in. The corn is giving me 1 additional health in this city of Washington. If you look over here at New York, corn is also in there as well. And as soon as Boston is connected to the trade route, the corn will appear in here as well. As um, another alternative would be for me to research sailing so that the trade could move along the coast instead as a trade route, and it would be connected via the coast. Since it's more likely it would be more likely that I complete the road before researching sailing. This is how we're going to be connecting the city of Boston to my main city's trade routes. So as the next research, we're going to go ahead and research ironworking because it will reveal the iron resource on the map, which is a very important strategic resource, even more so than copper, for the medieval and Renaissance eras of the game. Now, one of the best ways to deter the AI from declaring war on you, in addition to keeping your cities away from their cities, because if you have close borders, that seems to encourage them to be more trigger happy for declaring war, is if you have a lot of defensive units or just a large army in general. Uh, you don't want yourself to become too weak because that will sort of encourage them to take advantage of your weakness and declare war. So I'm trying to build up my defenses here. In this case, I'm building archers in both of those cities. In addition to the archers that are currently in them. Each city has 1 archer, but I'm going to have an additional archer in there as well. And if we want to take a look at how much this is going to cost us, currently our unit cost is at 0. Now, this is the financial advisor, and it can be accessed by pressing F2. Our current unit cost is 0. Our unit supply is 0. And really all we're paying for right now is city maintenance. However, I can only have a total of 14 units for free. After that, they're going to start costing me. So that's something to keep in mind. And as the game progresses, it might be beneficial to delete older units that are no longer serving much of a purpose in your land anymore besides costing you money. For example, I have warriors in the city. Once I get more advanced units, I could upgrade the warriors, but I don't have the gold for it. So instead, I would most likely just delete them. So here I'm ready to improve the first aquatic resource that I have access to in my empire. You can do so by moving a workboat onto the tile that has the resource on it and clicking the create fishing boats. However, unlike worker units that are on land, creating fishing boats will actually consume the fishing boat itself in the process. So here we're going to go ahead and contact Julius Caesar with the intent of acquiring open borders from him. So if we can see here, just go back, you click on we'd like to make a trade proposal, and they'll open up a screen that shows his resources and other things that he can trade versus the things that you have that you can trade with him. In this case, he will trade us clams, but we don't have anything to give him for it. He'll also trade open borders with us. So clicking that, he will accept it. And as time goes by and we maintain our open borders, I will actually receive a diplomatic bonus for having open borders with him. He will think better of me for doing so. The same applies to trading resources. As time goes on and you maintain that trade connection, they think higher of you. So now, while some people might go ahead and move my 4th settler over here towards the horses to acquire those as a military resource, I think I'm going to be moving my settler down here in an attempt to acquire this gold before any of these other 2 civilizations, Rome and the Native American Empire, move in too close and it becomes too contested. Now, unlike Civilization 5, the civilizations won't actually warn you to keep out of a certain area. They will just declare war on you if they decide that they need more territory in that area. So maybe a little less subtle. And I think we're going to call it quits for episode 2 on that one. I will continue playing the game along on episode 3. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in episode 3.